The wind howled mercilessly across the jagged peaks of the Frost-Reach Mountains, whipping snow and ice into blinding clouds that reduced visibility to mere meters. Even through the reinforced walls of the Interplanetary Security Initiative outpost, the haunting moan of Archiphy's eternal winter could be heard, a constant reminder of the hostile world beyond their shelter. Commander Zamir Khan stood before the thermal imaging display, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied the anomalous heat signature buried beneath 3 meters of glacial ice. It pulsed weakly, like the fading heartbeat of something barely clinging to life. "Satellite confirmation, sir," Lieutenant Ali Raza reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "The signature has been stable for the past 6 hours, but it's weakening. Temperature reads at -15 Celsius, far warmer than the surrounding ice at -70. Zamir nodded, his breath forming a small cloud in the chilly air of the command center. Despite the outpost's heating systems, the bitter cold of Archifer always seemed to find its way inside, much like the doubts that were now creeping into his mind. "Living organism?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The AI is 93% certain," Ali confirmed. "But it can't identify the species. Whatever's down there isn't in our database." Sergeant Kareem Malik approached, his hulking frame casting a shadow over the display. "Could be another failed terraforming experiment. Wouldn't be the first time some corporation dumped their mistakes on this ice ball. Or it could be someone who needs our help," Faria Hassan interjected. The medical officer's voice carried the quiet authority that had earned her respect throughout the ISI ranks. "The oath doesn't specify species, Commander." Zamir turned to face his team, the only 3 officers stationed with him at this remote outpost on the edge of human-explored space. They had been together for 3 years, a small but efficient unit tasked with monitoring this quadrant for illegal biotech operations and providing emergency response when needed. They knew the protocols as well as he did: investigate, document, report. But protocols rarely accounted for the dying heat signature of an unknown life form buried in ice. "Prep the emergency dropship," Zamir ordered, making his decision. "Full medical kit, excavation gear, and survival equipment. We launch in 30 minutes. "Sir," Ali hesitated. "Command protocol requires authorization for first contact scenarios." "This isn't first contact, Lieutenant," Zamir replied, already moving toward the equipment bay. "This is a rescue mission. We'll deal with the paperwork later." 28 minutes later, the sleek ISI dropship punched through the howling blizzard, its thrusters fighting against wind speeds that threatened to dash them against the mountainside. Zamir gripped the control yoke with steady hands, relying on the ship's thermal mapping system to guide them to the coordinates. Behind him, his team secured their gear and checked their environmental suits one final time. 500 meters to target," he announced, as the ship descended toward a relatively flat expanse of ice. "Brace for landing." The ship touched down with a jarring thud, its landing struts creaking under the strain of compensating for the uneven surface. Outside, the storm had intensified, a white fury that seemed determined to erase any trace of their presence. "External temperature reading -82 Celsius, Ali reported. "Wind speed 67 knots. We have approximately 4 hours before the ship's exterior systems freeze." Zamir nodded grimly. "Then we work fast. Kareem, bring the excavation gear. Faria, prepare the medical pod. Ali, maintain communication with the outpost and keep the engines warm." They sealed their environmental suits and cycled through the airlock. The moment the outer door opened, the full fury of Archifer assaulted them. The wind struck like a physical blow, and despite their suits' advanced heating systems, the cold immediately began to seep in, searching for any vulnerability. Guided by the handheld thermal scanners, they trudged through knee-deep snow toward the heat signature. Kareem took point, using a sonic probe to test the ice ahead of them for stability. After 20 minutes of grueling progress, they reached the coordinates. "It's directly beneath us," Faria said, her voice crackling through the comm system. 3 meters down. Kareem deployed the portable laser drill, its blue beam cutting through the ice with remarkable precision. Steam rose from the widening hole, instantly crystallizing in the frigid air to form a glittering cloud around them. As they worked, Zamir couldn't shake the growing sense of urgency that tightened his chest. Whatever lay beneath the ice was fading. The heat signature had weakened even further during their journey. 2 hours of careful excavation brought them to their target. Kareem shut down the drill, and Faria stepped forward with a smaller scanner, passing it over the newly exposed surface. "I'm detecting a cavity," she reported, "and the heat source is just beyond this last layer. It's moving." With utmost care, they cleared away the remaining ice, revealing what appeared to be a small chamber, and inside, curled into a tight ball, was a child. At least, it appeared to be a child. Its skin was a pale blue, almost translucent, with a faint pattern of lighter markings that resembled frost on a window. The creature's eyes were closed, and its chest barely rose and fell with shallow breaths. It couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, with delicate limbs and features that were strikingly humanoid, despite the alien coloration. "Allah have mercy," Kareem whispered, the first to break the stunned silence. Faria immediately went into medical mode, running her scanner over the small body. Core temperature dangerously low, even for a cryogenic species. Heartbeat erratic. "We need to move now if we're going to save it." With gentle movements that belied his size, Kareem helped Faria secure the child in a thermal blanket. The creature didn't stir as they carefully lifted it from its icy prison and began the trek back to the ship. The return journey was even more arduous, fighting against the intensifying storm while trying to protect their fragile charge. By the time they reached the dropship, ice had formed on their visors, and the ship itself was becoming encased in a growing shell of frost. "Ali, prep for immediate departure," Zamir ordered as they cycled through the airlock. "Faria, stabilize our guest." Once inside the relative warmth of the ship, Faria transferred the child to the medical pod. The automated systems immediately began assessment, bathing the small blue form in soft golden light as sensors analyzed its condition. "Remarkable," Faria murmured as she studied the readings. "Humanoid skeletal structure, but cellular composition unlike anything I've seen. It appears to be in some sort of hibernation state, but it's failing." The ship lurched as Ali engaged the thrusters, fighting to break free from the ice that had already begun to encase the landing struts. With a sickening crack, they tore away from the surface and climbed into the storm-tossed sky. "Setting course for the outpost," Ali reported. "ETA 12 minutes. Zamir remained by the medical pod, watching the small chest rise and fall with each labored breath. There was something profoundly vulnerable about the child, for despite its alien appearance, he couldn't think of it as anything else. A child, alone in the ice of this merciless world. How had it come to be there? What tragedy had befallen it? The outpost's medical bay was already prepared when they arrived. The child was transferred to a more advanced stasis chamber, calibrated to gradually raise its core temperature. For 6 hours, they monitored its vital signs, watching as they stabilized and then slowly strengthened. "Commander," the outpost's AI announced through the speakers. "Central Command is requesting a status report on the unscheduled mission." Zamir sighed. He had known this moment would come. "Put them through to my office." Commander Malik's stern face appeared on the screen, his silver-streaked beard failing to conceal his displeasure. "Commander Khan, would you care to explain why you led an unauthorized expedition that potentially violated first contact protocols?" "It was a rescue mission, sir," Zamir replied evenly. "We detected a life form in distress." "A life form not in our database," Malik countered. "Do you have any idea of the diplomatic implications, the quarantine procedures that should have been followed?" "With respect, sir," There wasn't time for procedures. The subject would have died. The subject, Malik emphasized the word, has been transported to an ISI facility without proper containment protocols. It could be carrying unknown pathogens, or worse, it could be a biological weapon deliberately planted for us to find. Zamir felt his jaw tighten. It's a child, sir. It's an unknown alien entity that you've brought into a secure facility, Malik corrected. I'm dispatching a specialist team. Until they arrive, the entity is to remain in quarantine. No direct contact. Is that clear? Commander. Crystal, sir, Zamir responded, his voice carefully neutral. Good. The team will arrive in 72 hours. Malik out. The screen went dark, and Zamir leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. 72 hours. 3 days before the child would be taken away, likely to be studied and analyzed in some sterile lab. He thought of the small blue face, so peaceful in its induced sleep, and felt an unexpected protectiveness surge within him. A soft chime from the medical bay drew him back. Faria met him at the door, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. It's waking up, she said simply. They entered to find the child sitting upright in the stasis chamber, now adjusted to function as a secure observation room. Its large, almond-shaped eyes were open, revealing irises of the most startling silver white, like moonlight reflected on new snow. Those eyes darted around the room, taking in the strange environment with unmistakable fear. When its gaze fell on Zamir and Faria, it pressed itself against the far wall of the chamber, trembling visibly. The universal translator isn't picking up any language patterns, Ali reported from the monitoring station. It hasn't made any vocalizations. Lower the barrier, Zamir instructed. I'm going in. Commander, Karim protested. Quarantine protocols. Will remain in place. Zamir finished for him. I'll wear protective gear, but I need to establish contact. Suited in a lightweight containment uniform, Zamir entered the chamber slowly, his hands held open at his sides in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The child watched him with those luminous eyes, still pressed against the wall, but no longer trembling quite so violently. Hello, Zamir said softly. My name is Zamir. We found you in the ice. You're safe now. The child tilted its head slightly, as if trying to understand. Zamir took a slow step forward, then another. When he was about 3 feet away, he knelt down to bring himself closer to the child's eye level. You were very cold, he continued, miming shivering. We brought you here to get warm. The child's gaze never left his face, studying him with an intensity that felt almost physical. Then, to Zamir's surprise, it mimicked his earlier gesture, holding its small blue hands, palms up toward him. I think it understands, he said quietly to the others, watching through the observation window. He reached into a pocket and withdrew a small packet. Opening it carefully, he revealed a piece of dried fruit, a simple date from his personal rations. He held it out to the child. Food, he explained, to help you get stronger. The child hesitated, then slowly extended one delicate hand. Its fingers were slightly longer than a human child's would be, with an extra joint that allowed them to curl around the date with remarkable dexterity. It brought the fruit to its nose, sniffing cautiously, then took a tiny bite. The reaction was immediate. Its silver eyes widened, and a sound that could only be described as a delighted chirp escaped its throat. It quickly devoured the rest of the date, then looked at Zamir expectantly. He smiled and offered another. As the child ate, Zamir noticed that its skin seemed to have taken on a slightly deeper blue hue, and the frost-like patterns had become more pronounced. Signs of improved health, perhaps. Over the next few hours, Zamir remained with the child, gradually establishing a rudimentary form of communication through gestures and simple drawings on a tablet. The child proved remarkably intelligent, quickly grasping the concept of the digital interface and using it to create its own symbols. One drawing in particular caught Zamir's attention, a crescent shape with rays extending from it, which the child repeatedly indicated while making a soft, melodic sound that the translator couldn't interpret. "Could be its homeworld," Ali suggested. "Or maybe its name." "Or family," Faria added. "It keeps looking at you when it shows that symbol, Commander." Indeed. The child had developed a clear attachment to Zamir, becoming agitated whenever he moved to leave the chamber and calming only when he returned. By the end of the first day, it would sit beside him, occasionally touching his arm or hand, as if to reassure itself of his presence. That night, after the child had finally fallen asleep, curled on a bed of soft blankets, the team gathered in the command center to discuss their findings. "The AI has completed its initial analysis," Ali reported. "Its DNA, if we can call it that, contains elements that match no known species. However, there are sequences that appear engineered." "Engineered," Zamir repeated, a cold feeling settling in his stomach that had nothing to do with Arkafi's perpetual winter. Ali nodded grimly. "The working theory is some form of hybridization, and there's more. The thermal scan picked up traces of artificial structures approximately 2 kilometers from where we found the child. They're mostly buried under ice now, but they appear to be the remains of a research facility." "I think we should investigate," Karim said, voicing what they were all thinking. "If someone was conducting illegal genetic experiments out here, we'd need to inform Central Command," Faria pointed out. "Request a proper excavation team." Zamir considered their options. Command had already made it clear they viewed the child as a potential threat. If they learned it might be the product of illegal genetic engineering, the consequences could be severe. "We have 48 hours before the specialist team arrives," he said finally. "We'll conduct a preliminary investigation ourselves. Ali, you'll stay with the child. The rest of us will take the dropship at first light." "And if Command asks," Faria inquired. "We're following up on anomalous readings detected during the rescue mission," Zamir replied. "Which is the truth. The facility ruins were almost completely engulfed by the ever-growing ice sheet, with only a small section of what appeared to be a communications array still visible above the surface. Using the ship's thermal drills, they carved an entrance into what scans indicated was the main structure. Inside, the facility lay in eerie preservation, frozen in time by the extreme cold. Emergency lighting flickered weakly to life as they moved through the corridors, powered by failing backup systems that had somehow survived years of abandonment. "Look at this," Faria called, her light illuminating a logo etched into a wall panel, a stylized double helix wrapped around a planetary symbol. "Dominion Biop. They're one of the largest biotech corporations in the sector. What would they be doing out here?" Karim wondered. "Arkafor isn't exactly prime real estate." "Precisely why it would be perfect for experiments they didn't want anyone to know about," Zamir replied, his voice tight with growing anger. They proceeded deeper into the facility, eventually reaching what appeared to be the main laboratory. Unlike the rest of the structure, this room showed signs of deliberate destruction, shattered equipment, scorched walls, and data terminals that had been physically smashed. "Someone wanted to erase whatever was happening here," Faria observed, examining a partially melted sample storage unit. Karim discovered a backup power node that was still functional and managed to restore partial systems to the lab. A few monitors flickered to life, displaying corrupted data and fragmented files. "I might be able to recover some of this," he said, connecting his portable interface to the system. "The cold has actually helped preserve the data storage cores." After an hour of painstaking work, Karim had managed to extract several video logs and research documents. The team gathered around as he played the first recoverable entry. A tired-looking woman in a lab coat appeared on screen. "Project Nest, Day 248. The third-generation subject continues to show remarkable stability. The integration of the xenogenic material has been more successful than we anticipated, with cellular reproduction proceeding at normal rates. Subject demonstrates expected hypothermic adaptations, with core temperature regulation functioning within parameters. The video skipped, damaged by whatever had occurred in the facility. When it resumed, the same researcher looked significantly more haggard. Day 307. Corporate has ordered acceleration of the development process. I've explained the risks multiple times, but they're insisting we proceed with maturation enhancement. The ethical implications aside, I'm concerned about the physiological impact. These aren't just cells in a petri dish anymore. Another skip. Day 352. Subject is now displaying cognitive functions appropriate to a human child of approximately 3 years. Language acquisition has begun, though vocalization is limited by physiological differences in the laryngeal structure. The attachment behaviors are unexpected, particularly toward myself. I find myself. The researcher paused, glancing over her shoulder, as if afraid of being overheard. I find myself responding to these behaviors in ways that are not strictly professional. Corporate would not approve. The next several entries were too corrupted to play, but Kareem managed to recover one final log, dated nearly 6 months later. The researcher's face was gaunt, her eyes ringed with dark circles. They're shutting us down. Not just the project, the entire facility. The board is covering their tracks. They're sending a team to dispose of everything, including her. The woman's voice broke. I won't let them do it. I've disabled the security systems. When the transport arrives, I'm taking her into the mountains. There's a cave system to the north that doesn't appear on any surveys. We can hide there until I figure something out. If anyone finds this, her name is... The video cut off abruptly. Silence fell over the team as they absorbed the implications of what they had just witnessed. The child, Faria said finally. She is the result of these experiments, combining human and alien DNA. And someone tried to save her, Zamir added, his mind racing with possibilities. The researcher. She must have taken the child into the mountains, just as she planned. But we found her alone, Kareem pointed out. What happened to the researcher? The answer came in the form of a small side room they discovered off the main laboratory. Unlike the rest of the facility, this room had been sealed shut, its door frozen in place for what must have been years. When they finally managed to force it open, they found the remains of a human woman, her body preserved by the cold. She lay on a simple cot, a notebook clutched in her stiffened fingers, and an empty vial on the floor beside her. She chose to end it, Faria said softly, after examining the scene. Probably after hiding the child. Maybe she thought someone would find her. Or maybe she just couldn't bear to watch her die slowly of exposure or starvation. Zamir gently removed the notebook from the woman's grasp. Its pages contained handwritten notes, personal reflections on the project, and, most importantly, details about the child they had rescued. Snowdrop, he read aloud from one entry. That's what she called her, because of the patterns on her skin. The final pages of the notebook contained desperate plans, abandoned supply caches in the mountains, crude maps of cave systems, and instructions for inducing a hibernation state in the child that might allow her to survive until help came. She did everything she could to give Snowdrop a chance, Zamir said, a newfound respect for the deceased researcher filling him. We need to make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain. They documented everything, copying all recoverable files and taking samples from the lab that might help understand Snowdrop's unique physiology. Before leaving, they laid the researcher's body to rest as best they could, covering her with a thermal sheet and sealing the room once more. The return to the outpost was somber, each team member lost in their own thoughts about what they had discovered. But as they approached the landing bay, Ali's urgent voice came over the comm. Commander, we have a situation, An unscheduled transport has entered orbit. They're identifying themselves as a Dominion BIOP security team with ISI clearance. Zamir's blood ran cold. How long until they dock? 20 minutes, sir. They're demanding immediate access to the facility and... Ali hesitated. And custody of any research assets we may have recovered. Stall them, Zamir ordered. Tell them our docking systems are experiencing technical difficulties due to the cold. Buy us as much time as you can. As soon as they were inside, Zamir raced to the observation chamber. Snowdrop was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing on the tablet he had given her. She looked up as he entered, her silver eyes brightening with recognition. She held up the tablet, showing a crude but recognizable drawing of Zamir himself. "Baba," she said clearly, the first recognizable word she had spoken. The simple word struck Zamir like a physical blow. Father. She was calling him father. In that moment, his decision crystallized. Whatever Snowdrop was, however she had come to be, she was a child who had already endured more suffering than any being should have to bear. And he would not allow her to become a laboratory specimen or, worse, be disposed of by the corporation that had created her. "Ali," he called over the comm. "Patch me through to Commander Malik, priority channel." Malik's face appeared on the nearest screen, his expression severe. "Commander Khan, I've just been informed that you have unauthorized visitors approaching your position." "Sir, I need to report a critical discovery," Zamir said, choosing his words carefully. "We've identified the source of the anomalous readings. It appears Dominion BIOP was conducting illegal genetic experiments on Arkhov. The child we rescued is the result of those experiments." Malik's eyebrows rose fractionally, the closest he ever came to showing surprise. "Do you have evidence to support this claim?" "Substantial evidence, sir. We've recovered research logs, genetic profiles, and facility records. The corporation was attempting to create human-alien hybrids, in direct violation of the Tashkent Conventions. And now Dominion representatives have conveniently appeared at your doorstep," Malik mused. "This complicates matters. Sir, I believe they intend to eliminate evidence of their illegal activities," Zamir pressed. "Including the child." Malik was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "The specialist team I mentioned is already en route, Commander. They'll arrive in approximately 20 hours. Until then, you are authorized to deny access to the Dominion BIOP team, citing ongoing ISI investigation protocols." Relief washed over Zamir. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Khan," Malik replied grimly. "If what you've discovered is true, this situation is about to become extremely volatile. The child remains in quarantine. Understood?" "Yes, sir." As the communication ended, Kareem's voice came urgently over the internal system. "Commander, the Dominion ship is overriding our docking protocols. They're forcing entry." "Security alert," Zamir ordered. "All personnel to defensive positions. Ali, secure the evidence we collected. Faria, get to Snowdrop and prepare for emergency evacuation." He rushed to the armory, where Kareem was already distributing weapons, standard ISI-issue stun rifles, designed to incapacitate without lethal force. "Sir," Kareem said as he handed Zamir his weapon, "we're outnumbered at least 3-1. We just need to hold them off until the ISI specialist team arrives," Zamir replied, checking the charge on his rifle. "Dominion BIOP may have influence, but even they can't openly attack ISI personnel without consequences." The first breach came at the main airlock. The security feed showed 6 armed individuals in corporate tactical gear, forcing their way through the partially disabled door mechanisms. "This is Commander Zamir Khan of the ISI," Zamir announced over the outpost's communication system. "You are attempting unauthorized entry into a secure facility during an active investigation. Stand down immediately." The response came in the form of weapons fire as the intruders blasted through the final security barrier. Alarms blared throughout the outpost, and emergency containment doors began to close automatically, designed to compartmentalize the facility in case of breach. "Fall back to secondary positions," Zamir ordered, as the first intruders pushed into the main corridor. "Use the containment doors to channel them." What followed was a desperate running battle through the outpost's winding corridors. The Dominion team was well-trained and equipped with military-grade weapons far more than would be standard for a corporate security detail. They moved with precision, clearly familiar with ISI facility layouts. Zamir and Karim managed to hold them at a key junction, using the narrow passage to their advantage. Two of the intruders went down under their coordinated fire, but the others pressed forward relentlessly. "Commander!" Ali's voice came through the comm, breathless with exertion. "They've split their forces. A second team is approaching the medical bay from the secondary entrance." Zamir's heart seized. "Faria!" "I'm here with Snowdrop," she responded. "We've barricaded the inner chamber, but they're cutting through." "Hold position," Zamir ordered. "I'm on my way." To Karim, he added, "Can you hold here?" The big man nodded grimly. "Go, protect the child." Zamir sprinted through the maintenance tunnels that ran alongside the main corridors, taking a circuitous route to avoid the intruders. As he approached the medical bay, he heard the distinctive whine of cutting tools working through metal. He entered through a service hatch to find Faria positioned behind an overturned examination table. Her weapon, trained on the door, that was now glowing red-hot around the edges as the intruders cut their way through. Behind her, Snowdrop huddled in the corner, her silver eyes wide with terror. "They'll be through in less than a minute," Faria said as Zamir joined her. He nodded, mind racing through options. "The emergency escape pods." "Too far. We'd never make it across the open section of the bay." The door began to buckle inward, metal groaning as it gave way to the relentless pressure of the cutting tools. "Faria," Zamir said quietly, "when they break through, I'll draw their fire. You take Snowdrop through the service tunnel and head for the communication array. There's an emergency beacon there. Activate it. It'll alert every ISI ship in the quadrant." "Sir," Faria began to protest. "That's an order, Lieutenant," Zamir cut her off. "Snowdrop is the priority." The door crashed inward with a deafening clang, and Zamir immediately opened fire, forcing the intruders to take cover in the corridor. Faria seized the moment to dash to Snowdrop, scooping up the terrified child and making for the service hatch. One of the intruders spotted the movement and swung his weapon toward them. Without hesitation, Zamir threw himself into the line of fire. Searing pain tore through his shoulder as the energy blast struck him, but he remained upright, returning fire with grim determination. "Go!" he shouted to Faria, who had paused at the sight of his injury. "Now!" She disappeared into the tunnel with Snowdrop, and Zamir allowed himself a moment of relief before turning his full attention back to the attackers. There were 4 of them, spreading out to flank his position. His injured arm hung uselessly at his side, but he kept firing with his good hand, forcing them to keep their distance. A sudden explosion rocked the facility, followed by the wail of the atmospheric breach alarm. Over the comm, he heard Karim's strained voice. "Bastards blew a hole in the outer wall. Emergency containment is failing. We're venting atmosphere in sections 3 through 5. Status of the intruders," Zamir demanded, ducking as a volley of fire streaked over his head. "2 down, but the rest are pressing toward your position. They seem desperate." Desperate enough to risk compromising an entire ISI facility? Whatever Snowdrop represented to them, they were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to retrieve or eliminate her. The sound of running feet from the corridor told him more attackers were joining the assault on his position. Zamir calculated his remaining options and found them severely limited. He was outnumbered, injured, and rapidly running out of cover as the intruders' fire systematically destroyed the barricade. "Ali," he called over the comm. "Status of outgoing communications." "Still jammed, sir," came the tense reply. "They brought some serious tech. I'm trying to break through, but it'll take time." Time they didn't have. Zamir made his decision. All personnel, fall back to emergency positions, he ordered. Initiate protocol avalanche. There was a moment of stunned silence over the comm. Sir, Ali finally responded, that would require override authorization Con 773 Epsilon. Zamir cut him off. Execute now. Protocol avalanche was a last resort measure, designed to protect sensitive information and personnel in the event of an overwhelming hostile force. It would trigger a controlled collapse of specific sections of the outpost, effectively sealing off critical areas including the medical bay, where he now made his stand. The facility's AI responded immediately to the override code. Protocol avalanche initiated. Structural charges will detonate in 60 seconds. All personnel evacuate designated collapse zones immediately. The announcement caused visible confusion among the attackers. Several of them fell back, while others pressed forward with renewed urgency. Zamir used their momentary disarray to make a dash for the secondary exit, hoping to draw them away from Faria and Snowdrop's escape route. His gambit worked. All attention turned to him as he sprinted down the corridor. Energy blasts impacting the walls around him. 30 seconds to structural collapse, the AI intoned calmly. Zamir rounded a corner and found himself face to face with a tall figure in distinctive combat armor, clearly the leader of the Dominion team. The man's helmet retracted, revealing cold eyes and a face marked with the subtle enhancements of expensive genetic modification. Where is the asset? He demanded, raising his weapon. Gone, Zamir replied, his own weapon steadily pointed at the man's chest. And you're about to be buried under 1,000 tons of ice. 20 seconds to structural collapse. The man's expression hardened. Do you have any idea what that thing is capable of? What it was designed to do? It's not a child, it's a weapon. She, Zamir corrected, is under ISI protection. And so far, the only threat I've seen came through that airlock with a Dominion biop insignia. 10 seconds to structural collapse. The leader's face contorted with rage and desperation. You fool! He never finished the sentence. The first charges detonated, sending shockwaves through the structure. Ceiling panels crashed down as support beams gave way, and the temperature plummeted as the environmental systems failed. Zamir turned and ran, hearing the leader's footsteps close behind him. The path to the emergency shelters was just ahead if he could reach it before the final charges. A blast caught him in the back, sending him sprawling to the floor. Pain exploded across his consciousness as he struggled to rise. The leader stood over him, weapon aimed at his head. Where is it? He demanded again. Zamir smiled through the pain. Safe from you. The final charges detonated. The world dissolved into a cacophony of screaming metal and crashing ice as the ceiling gave way. Zamir's last conscious thought was of Snowdrop's silver eyes, bright with intelligence and trust. He had done his duty not just as an ISI commander, but as the protector she had named him to be, Baba, father. In the darkness that followed, something unexpected happened. A soft blue glow began to emanate from beneath the rubble, growing stronger by the second. It pulsed like a heartbeat, pushing back the encroaching darkness with each surge. Where Zamir lay, half buried under collapsed ceiling panels, the blue light found him, enveloping his broken body in its gentle radiance. And with the light came warmth, not the harsh heat of fire, but the nurturing warmth of life itself. Far above, in the emergency communication array where Faria had taken refuge with Snowdrop, the child suddenly stiffened in her arms. Those silver eyes grew wide, then began to glow with the same blue light that now illuminated the ruins below. Baba, Snowdrop whispered, reaching out toward the floor as if she could touch something far beneath them. Before Faria could react, the child slipped from her grasp and placed her small blue hands flat against the floor. The light within her intensified, flowing down through her arms and into the structure of the outpost itself. The metal beneath her palms began to hum with energy. In the collapsed section below, the rubble shifted. Metal and ice moved as if alive. bending away from Zamir's motionless form. The blue light concentrated around his wounds, seeping into damaged tissue, knitting together what had been torn apart. Zamir gasped as consciousness returned in a rush of sensation. The pain was gone, replaced by a tingling warmth that suffused every cell of his body. He could feel a presence in the light, a familiar consciousness reaching out to his. "Snowdrop," he whispered. The light pulsed in response, as if in greeting. Then, gradually, it began to recede, leaving behind a clear path through the rubble and a body that, while exhausted, was somehow whole again. With trembling limbs, Zamir pulled himself upright and began to navigate through the ruins of the outpost. The structural collapse had done its work well. The section where the Dominion team had been was completely sealed off by tons of debris and rapidly forming ice. He made his way to the communication array, following an instinct that pulled him toward the source of the healing light. When he finally reached the door, it slid open to reveal Faria standing protectively over Snowdrop, who had collapsed into an exhausted sleep. "Commander," Faria breathed, disbelief written across her features. "You're alive. How?" Zamir knelt beside the sleeping child, noting the way her skin had paled to an almost white blue. The frost patterns temporarily faded. "She did it," he said simply. "Somehow, she reached me." "The bioengineering," Faria suggested, her scientific mind already seeking explanations. "Perhaps they built in regenerative capabilities, or some form of energy manipulation." "Whatever they intended her to be," Zamir said firmly, "what matters is what she chose to be." He gently brushed a strand of silvery hair from Snowdrop's peaceful face. "She chose to save a life rather than take it." 12 hours later, the ISI specialist team arrived to find a very different situation than they had expected. Instead of a routine quarantine and containment operation, they were met with the aftermath of an armed assault on an ISI facility by corporate forces. The evidence recovered from the abandoned research station provided irrefutable proof of Dominion Biop's illegal activities. Combined with the blatant attack on ISI personnel, it was enough to trigger a sector-wide investigation into the corporation's operations. As for Snowdrop, her status remained complicated. Technically, a product of illegal experimentation, she existed in a legal gray area that had no clear precedent. But when Commander Malik finally arrived to assess the situation personally, he made an unprecedented decision. "The child will remain under ISI protection," he declared, after reviewing all the evidence and witnessing Snowdrop's obvious attachment to Zamir. "And, given the exceptional circumstances, Commander Khan will serve as her interim guardian until her final status can be determined." Zamir could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Sir!" Malik's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The regulations were not written with such unique situations in mind. Commander, sometimes we must adapt. Besides," he added, glancing at where Snowdrop sat drawing contentedly on her tablet, "she has already demonstrated remarkable abilities that could be of great value to the ISI. Better, she learned to use them under proper guidance." In the months that followed, Zamir and Snowdrop were transferred to Earth, where specialized facilities could better accommodate her unique physiology while allowing her to begin the process of integration into society. Her remarkable healing abilities were carefully studied, revealing potential applications that could revolutionize medical treatment. But more important to Zamir was her progress in language, art, and emotional development, watching her grow from a frightened creature into a curious, intelligent child with a gentle spirit. 1 year after her rescue from the ice of Arcahwar, Snowdrop stood before a small audience in the ISI Academy, where she had begun receiving specialized education alongside the children of other officers. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her pale azure skin, the frost-like patterns now a source of admiration rather than fear among her peers. "For Family Day," she announced in carefully practiced standard, her voice carrying the slight melodic quality that was uniquely hers. "I want to tell you about my Baba." She activated a holographic display that showed images of Zamir, some from official ISI records, others from their time together over the past year. "He found me when I was alone and cold," she continued. "He was not afraid of me, even though I looked different. He gave me food and warm blankets and taught me words." The audience listened in respectful silence as this extraordinary child recounted her rescue and the battle that had followed. Many of them knew the official version of events, but few had heard it from her perspective. "When the bad people came to take me away, Baba stood between them and me," she said, her silver eyes shining with emotion. "He was hurt very badly. I felt it happen, even though I was far away. And I knew I had to help him, the way he helped me." She touched a small pendant at her throat, a miniaturized ISI insignia that had once belonged to Zamir. "The doctors say I have special abilities that let me fix broken things. But Baba says the most special thing is not what we can do, but what we choose to do." In the back of the room, Zamir watched with pride swelling in his chest. Commander Malik stood beside him, as did Faria, Ali, and Kareem, all permanently reassigned to Earth to continue their work with Snowdrop and the emerging field of xenogenic medicine. "She's remarkable," Malik observed quietly. "The finest outcome we could have hoped for from such a beginning." Zamir nodded, his eyes never leaving the small blue figure who had so unexpectedly become the center of his world. "She taught me something I had forgotten in all my years of service," he admitted. "That sometimes the most important mission isn't the one in your orders." As if sensing his thoughts, Snowdrop looked up from her presentation and found him in the crowd. Her face lit up with a smile that seemed to illuminate the room, and she raised her hand in the special wave they had developed between them, fingers spread in a star pattern that meant, in their private language, "Forever family." Zamir returned the gesture, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead for this child of two worlds, she would face them with the same courage that had allowed her to survive alone in the ice, and with the knowledge that she would never be alone again. In the ISI Memorial Hall, a new installation had recently been unveiled, a child's drawing, carefully preserved and illuminated, showing a crescent moon shining down on two figures, one tall and dark, one small and blue standing hand in hand beneath a star-filled sky. Beside it, the citation read simply, "For courage beyond duty and compassion beyond boundaries." And beneath these formal words, in smaller script that visitors had to lean close to read, was a single sentence in a child's handwriting: "Thank you for finding me, Baba."